to set his head on success of any sort, and worst of all on success in war. I know little of the settlements, or of the notions that men hold in them; but up hereaway, even the Indians rate a warrior's character according to his luck. The principal thing with a soldier is never to be whipped, nor do I think mankind stops long to consider how the day was won or lost. For my part, Mabel, I make it a rule when facing the inimy to give him as good as I can send, and to try to be moderate after a defeat. Little need to be said on that score, as a flogging is one of the most humbling things in nature. The parsons preach about humility in the garrison, but if humility would make us Christians, the king's troops ought to be saints, for they've done little as yet this war but take lessons from the French, beginning at Fort Duquesne and ending at Ty.
My father could not have suspected that the position of the island was known to the enemy," resumed Mabel, whose thoughts were running on the probable effect of the recent events on the Sergeant.
"That is true, nor do I well see how the Frenchers found it out. The spot is well chosen, and it is not an easy matter, even for one who has travelled the road to and from it, to find it again. There has been treachery, I fear. Yes, there must have been treachery."
"Oh, Pathfinder, can this be?"
"Nothing is easier, Mabel, for treachery comes as natural to some men as eating. Now, when I find a man all fair words, I look close to his deeds; for when the heart is right, and really intends to do good, it is generally satisfied to let the conduct speak instead of the tongue."
"Jasper Western is not one of these," said Mabel impetuously. "No youth can be more sincere in his manner, or less apt to make the tongue act for the head."
"Jasper Western! Tongue and heart are both right with that lad, depend on it, Mabel; and the notion taken up by Lundie, and the Quartermaster, and the Sergeant, and your uncle too, is as wrong as it would be to think that the sun shone by night and the stars shone by day. No, I'll answer to Eau douce's honesty with my own scalp, or, at need, with my own rifle."
Bless you, Pathfinder!" exclaimed Mabel, extending her own hand and pressing the iron fingers of her companion, under a state of feeling that far surpassed her own consciousness of its strength. "You are all that is generous, all that is noble. God will reward you for it."
"Ah, Mabel, I fear me, if this be true, I should not covet such a wife as yourself, but would leave you to be sued for by some gentleman of the garrison, as your desarts require."
"We will not talk of this any more to night," Mabel answered in a voice so smothered as to seem nearly choked. "We must think less of ourselves just now, Pathfinder, and more of our friends. But I rejoice from my soul that you believe Jasper innocent. Now let us talk of other things. Ought we not to release June?"
"I've been thinking about the woman, for it will not be safe to shut our eyes and leave hers open, on this side of the blockhouse door. If we put her in the upper room, and take away the ladder, she'll be a prisoner at least."
"I cannot treat one thus who has saved my life. It would be better to let her depart, for I think she is too much my friend to do anything to harm me."
"You do not know the race, Mabel. You do not know the race. It's true she's not a full-blooded Mingo, but she consorts with the vagabonds, and must have larned some of their tricks. What is that?"
"It sounds like oars. Some boat is passing through the channel."
Pathfinder closed the trap that led to the lower room, to prevent June from escaping, extinguished the candle, and went hastily to a loop, Mabel looking over his shoulder in breathless curiosity. These several movements consumed a minute or two, and by the time the eye of the scout had got a dim view of things without, 2 boats had swept past and shot up to the shore, at a spot some 50 yards beyond the block, where there was a regular landing. The obscurity prevented more from being seen, and Pathfinder whispered to Mabel that the newcomers were as likely to be foes as friends, for he did not think her father could possibly have arrived so soon. A number of men were now seen to quit the boats, and then followed 3 hearty English cheers, leaving no further doubts of the character of the party. Pathfinder sprang to the trap, raised it, glided down the ladder, and began to unbar the door, with an earnestness that proved how critical he deemed the moment. Mabel had followed, but she rather impeded than aided his exertions, and but a single bar was turned when a heavy discharge of rifles was heard. They were still standing in breathless suspense, as the war whoop rang in all the surrounding thickets. The door now opened, and both Pathfinder and Mabel rushed into the open air. All human sounds had ceased. After listening half a minute, however, Pathfinder thought he heard a few stifled groans near the boats, but the wind blew so fresh, and the rustling of the leaves mingled so much with the murmurs of the passing air, that he was far from certain. But Mabel was borne away by her feelings, and she rushed by him, taking the way towards the boats. "This will not do, Mabel," said the scout, in an earnest but low voice, seizing her by an arm. "This will never do. Sartain death would follow, and that without sarving any one. We must return to the block." "Father! My poor dear murdered father!" said the girl wildly, though habitual caution, even at that trying moment, induced her to speak low. "Pathfinder, if you love me, let me go to my dear father." "This will not do, Mabel. It is singular that no one speaks, no one returns the fire from the boats, and I have left Killdeer in the block. But of what use would a rifle be when no one is to be seen?" At that moment the quick eye of Pathfinder, which, while he held Mabel firmly in his grasp, had never ceased to roam over the dim scene, caught an indistinct view of 5 or 6 dark crouching forms, endeavoring to steal past him, doubtless with the intention of intercepting the retreat to the blockhouse. Catching up Mabel, and putting her under an arm, as if she were an infant, the sinewy frame of the woodsman was exerted to the utmost, and he succeeded in entering the building. The tramp of his pursuer seemed immediately at his heels. Dropping his burden, he turned, closed the door, and had fastened one bar, as a rush against the solid mass threatened to force it from the hinges. To secure the other bars was the work of an instant. Mabel now ascended to the first floor, while Pathfinder remained as a sentinel below. Our heroine was still in that state in which the body exerts itself, apparently without the control of the mind. She relighted the candle mechanically, as her companion had desired, and returned with it below, where he was waiting her reappearance. No sooner was Pathfinder in possession of the light than he examined the place carefully, to make certain no one was concealed in the fortress, ascending to each floor in succession, after assuring himself that he left no enemy in his rear. The result was the conviction that the blockhouse now contained no one but Mabel and himself, June having escaped. When perfectly convinced on this material point, Pathfinder rejoined our heroine in the principal apartment, setting down the light and examining the priming of Killdeer before he seated himself. "Our worst fears are realized," said Mabel, to whom the hurry and excitement of the last 5 minutes appeared to contain the emotions of a life. "My beloved father and all his party are slain or captured." "We don't know that. Morning will tell us all. I do not think the affair so settled as that, or we should hear the vagabond Mingos yelling out their triumph around the blockhouse. Of one thing we may be sartain, if the enemy has really got the better, he will not be long in calling upon us to surrender. The squaw will let him into the secret of our situation, and as they well know the place cannot be fired by daylight, so long as Killdeer continues to deserve his reputation, you may depend on it they will not be backward in making their attempt while darkness helps them." "Surely I hear a groan." "'Tis fancy, Mabel, when the mind gets to be skeary, especially a woman's mind. She often conceives things that have no reality. I've known them that imagined there was truth in dreams." "Nay, I am not deceived. There is surely one below, and in pain." Pathfinder was compelled to own that the quick senses of Mabel had not deceived her. He cautioned her, however, to repress her feelings, and reminded her that the savages were in the practice of resorting to every artifice to attain their ends, and that nothing was more likely than that the groans were feigned with a view to lure them